Let's ask Mark Garnier, Conservative MP for Wyre Forest. Mark, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
Nice to see you. This has put the government in a really bad place, hasn't it? They don't seem to know quite how to deal with it, and it could get a lot worse in lots of other parts of the country.
Yeah, it could do. So currently there are 32,245 migrants housed in hotels as at the end of March this year. That's up from 29,585 this time last year. But potentially this could mean that every single one of those migrants may have to move out. Even if it isn't, kind of the whole lot, we've already seen. I think that Nigel Farage has said that those 10 councils, county councils, they're in control of, are going to be looking at doing this. And as you mentioned before, the news, Broxbourne as well. So Dan Jarvis, as you so rightly say, has been out on the news wires this morning. I listened to him on Radio 4 a bit earlier, and Emma Barnett kept pressing him to try and come up with what is the alternative, where are they going to go, and he kept refusing to answer that question. He kept saying they're going to make alternative arrangements. This is a big problem. 32,245 people looking for alternative arrangements. One of those is houses of multiple occupation. Those, of course, are used by people in the UK who are homeless and need help also. So what's going to happen? It's a massive problem.
Yeah, it really is, because it appears to me anyway that there simply isn't the amount of space, despite what Keir Starmer said before the liaison committee a while ago. There aren't lots and lots of houses that you can put these people in. I mean, I think there's over 100 people inside of the Bell Hotel, and certainly the council there, we just spoke to them, are saying we don't want them living in HMOs in Epping, so they're going to have to move them somewhere else. So there's a challenge that as well.
Yeah, there is. It's going to be having somebody else's HMO, but not everybody's got them. I mean, I used to have 2 hotels here in Wyre Forest, and in fact those were closed down a couple of years ago actually. But I'm not too sure where the migrants were moved to. I think some went to Birmingham.
Right.
It's entirely possible some of them have been sort of lost into the sort of the network around Wyre Forest of the HMOs. But it's a massive problem.
Yeah. And where does it go from here though? Because surely the end result has to be that they have to deport them.
Well, we can't. Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the government has already set a target of building 1.5 million new houses, which obviously is not designed for this group of the economy. But in theory, everybody can move up and leave space at the bottom. But that's not going to work either, because at the end of the day, if you start putting in more houses than people can afford, the price of houses will come down. That sounds great, but no house builder is going to build houses into a falling market. So you're not going to get your 1.5 million homes. At the end of the day, they've got to come up with a proposal. I mean, the Rwanda scheme, which they cancelled, was not in itself a solution to the problem, but what it was trying to deter people from making that journey across the channel. And there are a number of different things which I think we can start looking at. Is why are they choosing to come all the way through Europe and then come to the United Kingdom? Part of that problem is we don't have identity cards here. I'm a Conservative. Instinctively, I think identity cards are a bad idea, but I can see that there's a valid argument for them in this case. They get access to free health, they get access to housing, they get access to actually a dark economy where they can get away with working without necessarily having their national insurance numbers, all of that kind of stuff. They get free legal advice until such time as they really have exhausted every opportunity, which, if you think of an individual trying to get that legal advice, would cost them thousands. Yeah. So we offer, dare I say it, quite an attractive package, which is being sold by the migrant gangs.
Yes. Well, it's too attractive. It's simple as that. I mean, certainly the people that I speak to every day, Mark, say to me, we have to stop being so nice to them. What's wrong with putting them in tents? What's wrong with putting them in, former army barracks? What's wrong with putting them in a detention centre, for heaven's sake? We don't have to actually, roll out the red carpet for them, do we?
So I agree. So there is an issue of this, which is the interpretation of Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which basically says that you cannot treat them with inhuman and degrading treatment. Okay, so you've got to understand kind of where is the line between a 3-star hotel and inhuman degrading treatment. And that seems to be the problem. So there was this big argument, remember, of the Bibi Stockholm barge, which was apparently good enough for North Sea oil workers, but apparently not good enough for an illegal asylum seeker or an illegal migrant who seeks asylum. So you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, Barracks, surely disused barracks must be, kind of, as long as they're clean and not full of rats and stuff, then surely that would be good enough. Tents, the point made by your caller about going to Glastonbury and thousands of people sleep in tents over a long weekend. I mean, I get that, and a lot of people use tents, but I think for a long-term sort of migration camp, it may cause problems.
Yes.
But nonetheless, there's got to be an alternative which is less welcome.
But again, that is the other problem, isn't it? Because, you use the word long-term. It doesn't have to be long-term. If we had the system working properly, they would come in, they would be processed, and most of them would be refused asylum. And, of course, the trouble is that now we know when that happens, if they do actually get refused, they then appeal, and they're here for another year while they're appealing.
There's a massive problem about the number of asylum seekers that are being verified on an ongoing basis. I remember when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary and having a chat with her, and she said that she had managed to increase the number of asylum processes from 40 a week to 400 a week. Now, even that's hopeless. I mean, when you think about how many weeks is that going to take? Now, Yvette Cooper has increased it by, she claims, 115% or something. So that's nearly 1,000 a week. It's still nowhere near enough. So we've got to improve the efficiency of the Home Office. But it still comes back down to this fundamental point. Having met some of these asylum seekers, they strike me, the ones I did meet in these hotels. They're all young men. They were all ambitious. They were all actually, if you take away their background, take away the position they're in, they all struck me as being individuals who wanted to do well in life, and kind of actually a laudable trait. But the problem is they want to do well in life by gaming the system, apparently gaming the system that we have here, in order to come from wherever they have come from, actually France, to try and do well here in the UK. And this is a problem. And whilst we continue to allow that opportunity presented, I just didn't get the impression they were genuinely asylum seekers. They just wanted a better life. So by any normal definition, they were economic migrants.
Yeah, exactly. And that has to stop. There simply isn't enough room. We haven't got the bandwidth. We haven't got the money. We can't continue to hand them out, free everything. It's just got to stop.
And what's interesting about what you just said, Mike, is that I've got a lot of sort of kind of slightly right of centre chums and people I talk to and colleagues in Parliament, and even they, who in the past have sort of said we've got to do the right thing by people, even they're saying actually we've come to the end of our tether on this. We have, I think, reached a bit of a tipping point where even the more moderate part of our society is getting thoroughly fed up by this.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there was a time a few years ago where not everybody was talking. I mean, we've been talking about immigration as a problem for quite some time, probably quite a few years, more than anybody else. But when it wasn't necessarily the number one concern on people's lips, and they would talk more about the economy sometimes, or a couple of other stories they're worried about. But now everybody talks about immigration, no matter where you go, because it's affected everybody, because it's no longer just, let's shunt them all off to some, rather, cloggy industrial town in the north, where nobody in Westminster is going to bother. It's happening now in London. We saw Canary Wharf, where the demonstrations are going on. There's a hotel not far from me in southeast London, which apparently is going to be taken over as a migrant hotel. The process is still ongoing, and the Home Office don't seem to get it. And I think Labour are kind of in shock, but they're sort of getting it. But you never quite feel like their heart's in it,
Well, there's a lot of Labour backbenchers who are enthusiasts on human rights, and it's not a wrong thing to be an enthusiast on human rights. I mean, at the end of the day, we've benefited from a lot of this stuff ourselves. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure. I mean, Keir Starmer's got 415 Labour MPs, of which the majority are backbenchers. When you have a big parliamentary party, there are lots of opportunities for groups of people to get together and form strong caucuses of one form or another. We saw this with the Conservatives when we were in power, and now we're seeing it with Labour. And Keir Starmer runs a risk of his backbench rebellions causing him a whole load of problems on things which are quite important. And we saw this with PIP payments on the welfare bill, which was completely redrawn in the middle of its second reading, which was astonishing. And so there's no thrust of that at all because of backbench pressure. And this is where the problem lies, is that, we could be... So take, for example, the interpretation of Article 3 of the ECHR. These backbenchers could start pushing back against where that boundary lies between what is and what isn't inhuman and degrading treatment.
No, that is the problem. That is the problem. Mark, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mark Garnier, the Conservative MP for Wyre Forest.